activate each application one at a time, so I can see what, because then she can read me the name of the app.
It's like controlling units.
Okay, it's the worst thing ever that happens is she will, like if mail's not running, she will click on the mail icon to launch it, but then it, oh, I'm supposed to be surprised. Watch, here's the surprise video. Okay, look, I'm totally surprised with the show starting, even though we plan this every time. No, we don't. Like, I just start talking, and then I get going. I was talking about trying to help my mother on the phone with the computer, which I think you'll all agree is an exercise in frustration. And I was comparing that back to when I helped a guy who's trying to make a Braille screen reader. Because to me, a Braille screen reader at the time, this was like on the Apple II, so, 24 lines by 40 columns, and like, the Braille reader would like do Braille of the top line, and then he'd push a button and it would do the next line. I'm like, how could you possibly use the computer? You're just scanning up and down, running your fingers back and forth, trying to find what's on the screen. I'm like, why don't you just pay a guy to sit next to you and tell you what's on the screen? And he's like, well, I don't remember what he said. Come to think of it, he probably had a good answer for why he didn't do that. He was trying to write software for people. Maybe he was trying to be rich. He's trying to make Braille screen reading software and get rich, which he might have for all I know. Speaking of getting rich, many of you are aware that I'm freaking wealthy. Again, because of Keith Explains. Keith Explains is it's just a cash cow is what it is, okay? It's the merchandise up on the website. The big seller these days, as you know in the last show I mentioned the t-shirt, that just off the top of my head I was like, wow, something I said in the show, that'd be great on a t-shirt. So now you could buy a t-shirt that has another one of Keith's sayings. See, this is an older one. See, people love this t-shirt. Everything I say can be fully substantiated by my own opinion. It's true, so that's why people buy it. And if you toss in an extra 10 spot, I will sign it down here with a green marker, so it's hard to read. $15, I'll sign it with a black marker. $20, I will put your name. $30, I will spell your name correctly. $40, I will purposely misspell your name, which a lot of people like. They're like, that's really funny, Keith. Anyway, no, the new t-shirt, go order it. I'm told it's taken off up the charts. American Apparel cannot keep this in stock. If you walk into an American Apparel store, you will not find this t-shirt anywhere. Just because they can't keep it in stock, it's a t-shirt that says, "You are now participating in my delusion." Okay? It's new Keith Explains merchant. Anyway, Keith Explains, huge cash cow. Just, I had to buy another house to keep the bags of money. Because the first house was full of bags of money, and they won't give you more than 100 at the bank anymore. Apparently because of the damn terrorists or something. Because that would have been so much more convenient. A big bag of 500s is obviously a fifth the size of an equivalent bag of hundreds. I actually had to take up cigar smoking. Because first of all, cigars are expensive when you're paying to have them smuggled in from Cuba. And secondly, you can light cigars with $100 bills. And that's a good way to get rid of that. So I have been voluntarily limiting my life by I got to smoke like 9 cigars a day just to keep the path between the computer room and the kitchen open. It's very, very sad. The other thing I do, a lot of people say, Keith, why don't you donate your money to charity or something? And I'm like, what if I need it? And they're like, you're smoking it. And I'm like, I don't see how this really affects whether I need it or not. Why don't you donate it to charity or something? And I'm like, I don't do that. Instead, I invest in a wide variety of get poor schemes. Which is namely everything else I do is technically a get poor scheme. I've got the snotbroker.com where I offer to buy phlegm over the internet. That's a great way to lose money on the internet is by buying other people's mucus. What else? I have Botox for dogs. That's a lawsuit magnet. First of all, the Botox guys love to sue me. And secondly, dogs don't really care if they're wrinkly or not. Dog owners care, which is why I have dogs that get Botox quite regularly. But the dogs, if you ask them, don't care whether they're wrinkly or unwrinkly. What other big here's the new one. I talked about this in the show last time. At the time, I didn't have a name for it. And as you know, the first step in any get poor slowly scheme of Keith's is to come up with a clever name. There is no second step. And the third step is profit. As soon as I figure that second step out, I will be truly wealthy. I'll be Bill Gates wealthy. Anyway, last time I had the idea, we would sell you jewelry that you could wear under your clothes that would only show up on the TSA Look, I'm Naked scanners. And I was like, this is a great idea, but I couldn't think of a name for that business, so I abandoned the idea. And then I was at a conference with a friend of mine, and I was sitting around in the morning having breakfast with smart people. I don't know why they let me into this conference, because it was filled with smart people and me. It was the Smart People and Keith conference. They took a group photo near the end, and on the group photo, you can see they drew circles around all the smart people, and there were like 200 people there, 199 circles, and me. I was like, how am I going to find a picture of me? How am I going to find myself in the crowd? They'll be like, you're the one that's not circled. Anyway, I was sitting and having breakfast with smart people. I was talking, because talking's really all I do in the morning after I've had my coffee. And I had had my coffee at this point, and it came to me in a flash, in an amazing... So I registered immediately. Immediately, I went on my little phone, went to GoDaddy, registered tsajewelry.com. So now I have the website where I can sell the jewelry that's only visible when you're on the TSA Look, I'm Naked scanners. Now, again, step 2, people were like, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't do anything after I've registered the website. Again, my goal is to lose money slowly on a wide variety of seemingly real-looking businesses on the internet, none of which actually do anything other than bleed cash from Keith. But they were like, you should really make this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know how to. And then they were like, you're at a conference with 199 smart people, 109 smarter people than you. Maybe one of them could do it. And I'm like, yes! So I registered tsajewelry.com. Now all I have to do is get one of those smart people to figure out how to make me jewelry that's visible on an X-ray scanner, and then I will be freaky Warren Buffett rich, I think. Because, here, watch, I'm skipping ahead a page. So that was topic 1. But the next page has TSA on it. TSA's been in the news a lot. It stands for the Transportation Security something, I think. It's the people at the airports that yell at you to do something while you're doing it and then make you feel bad that you didn't do it correctly or fast enough or something. And they arranged to take these lovely, really wide hallways, which were designed to very efficiently get large groups of people from one end of a building to the other end. They gummed that up by taking the wide hallway and restricting it to a very narrow little lane that you must pass through one at a time while lights randomly beep. And the occasional person has to go stand in front of an X-ray machine and get nakedized. And this is fabulous. We have built this entire administration up. And the statistics I read the other day is with these new X-ray machines, these backscatter X-ray machines, where they're bouncing low-level X-rays off you. So, they're like, we want to see what's under your clothes. And I'm like, my girlfriend's right here. She could tell you. It's nothing to write home about, but it is fairly ordinary. You could buy a textbook and have a pretty good idea of what's under my clothes with a little more hair, because the textbook pictures never have any hair. I don't know why. But they're like, no, we need to know what's under your clothes in particular. And I'm like, well, she was there when I dressed this morning. She can tell you. And they're like, no, please stand in front of the Look, You're Naked X-ray machine. And then they bounce X-rays off you, and then they blur your face and your groin, we're told. And then they see if you have any bombs about you. Because as we know, bombs on a backscatter X-ray machine blink or something. And someone pointed out, well, they're bouncing X-rays off you, so that means some of the X-rays don't bounce off you. They actually keep going when they hit you, and they go into you. And X-rays, when they go into you, have some small chance of causing a cell mutation. Some percentage of cell mutations continue in a bad sense, and some set of those develop into deadly cancer. They're like, well, now if you fly with any regularity, your odds of dying from a cancer induced by a backscatter X-ray machine are essentially the same odds as you being killed by a terrorist on a plane. So I think we have declared victory. Okay, we should just we have shown that we are as willing to kill ourselves as the terrorists are. So we're done now. Okay, we can just say yes. Put up the banners. Okay, back to the first page. Someone in the audience asked me to talk about "Don't Ask, Don't Tell," which, as you know, is it's the name in the military we have where we say to people that have walked into a recruiting center and said, "I would like to join the Army and get shot at by people who want to kill me and possibly try to kill them, all to keep my country safe." And we're like, "Well, that's all nice, but do you like other dudes?" And if you say yes, we're like, "No, we're not going to let you kill people for us. I'm sorry, we got to draw the line somewhere. I mean, it's perfectly fine that you're willing to travel overseas and get bombed and kill people for us. But if you happen to like penis, we'll have none of that, okay? We're a fine, upstanding nation. We can't have any of that, for God's sakes. What will our enemies think if they're being shot at by gay dudes?" And truthfully, I don't understand what the issue is. They had a big survey, and they asked people, and they're like, 70% of the troops said, eh. And I'm like, well, I agree with those 70%. I mean, of the 30% that didn't say, eh, I'm not sure what they're thinking. But I read one quote, which is, someone in the service said, "We have a gay guy in our unit. He's really big, and he's really good at killing people." That's the kind of guy I want to have in our military, okay? If you're a tiny little gay guy, maybe you don't want to be in the military. But if you're a tiny little straight guy, maybe you don't want to be in the military. It's big and angry. I think big, well, maybe not angry, because you want them to be big and willing to kill people is what I think should be the primary recruitment goals of our country's military organization. This whole... Okay, Loretta and I went and saw a play called West Side Story up in the city the other day. And I've never seen West Side Story. I've seen parts of it on TV because I have movie channels, and you'd be like flipping and be like, "Oh, look, it's West Side Story from the 50s. It's a musical." And then I turn it off because I'm not really that into musicals, especially on TV, because... Like, musicals in a theater are okay because you're like, I paid a lot of money for this. I better enjoy it. But free musicals on TV, right? I can enjoy something else for free, is my point. I can enjoy something else more for free. So I tend to turn musicals on TV off, and then I pay a lot of money to see. Now that I said that out loud, it doesn't sound as reasoned as it does in my head. But suffice it to say that I go to these theaters and see musicals with some regularity. And West Side Story, and I'm like watching it, and then it occurred to me, oh, this is the modern remake of that Shakespeare play, because every play is a modern remake of a Shakespeare play. I think he just invented all of the plays possible. And now if you're a writer, I assume you just bring up your software and you say, let's take a Shakespeare 67 on Pluto with robots. Shakespeare 67 on Pluto with robots. Denzel Washington. Okay? You type all that in, and then the script comes out, and then all you got to do is find producers. And by find producers, I mean find people willing to pay Denzel Washington, because those stars are... I'm getting distracted, okay? So we went and saw West Side Story, and I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, oh, this blah, blah, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Then it occurred to me, like in West Side Story, you're supposed to be shocked near the end that the gang member has gotten a gun and is trying to kill someone. Like, okay, if you're a kid today, you have an Xbox in your house, and you have, like, San Andreas, where pretty much when you turn your video game on, the very first interaction in the video game is a guy going, hey, here's your gun, go kill that guy. And the next 72 hours of game-playing fun involve a radical array of weaponry, none of which is hard to acquire in any fashion whatsoever. You know, the whole notion of it being surprising that there'd be gangs of kids that just fought each other by punching. And like it would be a step up, right? It would be extreme if you brought knives to your fight. Whereas now I'm assuming the average gang war, first of all, there's no extreme, right? We managed to get 7 Uzis. Should we bring them? Of course we should bring them to the gang fight. Why? Why wouldn't we bring 7 Uzis to the gang fight? Sure, they're hard to shoot because I don't want to give anything away to the kids, but when you got a machine gun, you got to hold your arm down. Because as the bullets come out, it wants to move, up and to the left, okay? So if you're going to shoot someone with a machine gun, point below them to the right, and then fire off short bursts, and you'll probably kill them. God, I hope I'm not responsible for West Side Story. I'm like, this is not... There's one gun in the whole thing, and then you get to the end, and 2 people are dead, and you're like, 2 people are dead? We lose like 50 people on the roads every day in cars. Fondue restaurants. We ate. I'll skip ahead a little. So we went to Dickens Fair a couple weeks ago. Dickens Fair is like the Ren Fair, but it's indoors, yet somehow colder. And they just take a big warehouse, which has no heating system whatsoever, and they're like, we're going to recreate Charles Dickens's London from the 1880s, and you'll come and buy things. So in that sense, it's exactly like a Renaissance fair. There are no horses that I saw, so there's no whatever that horsey thing is you have at Renaissance fairs. Jousting. Jousting is the word I'm thinking of. But there are people wandering around in late 1880s clothes, and they say things like, they say Happy Christmas. Because apparently they didn't say Merry Christmas back then, they said Happy Christmas. And if they answered a phone, they said Ahoy. I just throw that in. There were no phones there. Although I briefly thought when my cell phone rang that I should answer it and say Ahoy! But the person I was talking to wouldn't know I was in 1880s Dickinsonian England. And they would just think I was crazy. And then I'm like, but they've called me. They already know I'm crazy. But I didn't say ahoy out loud because they hung up before I could. You don't want to call me because apparently when I see my phone ringing, I go through a long series of should I answer, how should I answer, what should I say. I'm distracted myself. We went to this Dickens Fair thing, and you pay them money to get in. And then once you're in there, you pay other people money. They're like, hi, I would like some booze. And they're like, here, that's $8. And I'm like, okay, sure, what the heck? I like booze, I have $8. Problem solved. And after a while, and there's this Happy Christmas thing. Everyone says Happy Christmas, because apparently it's Dixonian England just before Christmas. And it must be just before Christmas, because I don't think they said Happy Christmas at Thanksgiving back then, right? Now, we have extended Christmas really starts now around September. I think next year, late September, I'm going to start telling people Merry Christmas, just to see who hits me first and how long it takes. I mean, I know, like Steve at work would hit me if I said Merry Christmas to him in September, but Steve would hit me if I said Merry Christmas to him in December. Like I wear a red, once it hits December, I start wearing the red Santa elf hat around work. And then my compatriot down the hall, Steve, was like, why do you wear that hat? I hate it. And I'm like, that's why I wear this hat. I wear this hat because I know it annoys you. Not enough for you to try to kill me, but just a small amount to know that I'm annoying you a little bit. That's enough. It used to be if I was driving into work and I realized I forgot the hat, I'd just keep going. But now that I know it annoys you, I will turn around and drive home to get the hat. Because that's the kind of friend I am, Steve. Anyway, so we're in Dickinsonian England, and first of all, it's clean, so it's not really Dickinsonian England. When I assume like one person every 4 died of dysentery every year. I don't remember why, but families started out at like 18, and yet somehow ended up at like 6. And the little kids in crutches. I didn't see any little kids in crutches, so that part was a little. But then you pay for everything, and So we buy the drink, and I was designated driver, so I could only really, have 2 drinks for the day, and I had to start early, so I'd be sober, even though it's only 2 drinks, and so. But we invented a drinking game, which is every time anyone says Happy Christmas to you, you have to drink. And then I realized, well, if you say Happy Christmas to someone, they will say Happy Christmas back to you. Now, we had already set the rule, right? It doesn't count amongst ourselves. We can't say Happy Christmas to people. We can't say Happy Christmas, I couldn't say it to my sister-in-law, and that would not make her drink. But I could say it to anyone walking by my sister-in-law. And they would turn and say, and Happy Christmas to you. And then she would have to drink. So that was just hilarious. Yeah, it was. It was hilarious to me. And I started telling that story. And I bought a top hat, I think a year ago when I went, so I could wear the top hat around Dickens Fair, because everyone back then, I guess, wore top hats. And this makes me feel loved and welcome. And vaguely, period. I mean, sure, I had Levi's blue jeans on, and sneakers, and as I recall it, a Champion sweatshirt. But by God, from the ears up, I was in Dickinsonian England, and that was enough. I bought a little pirate thing, they had a stand there selling pirate stuff. And I'm like, pirates don't sell things. Pirates steal things. Okay? Like, in England, there was never a down at the docks, we're pirates, we're selling pirate chests. No, that is not what they did. Pirates were mean. Okay, see, I talked about that. WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks has been in the news all the time, and I don't have a lot to say about WikiLeaks because I don't have time to keep up with all the crap they're leaking. My main complaint is they're called WikiLeaks, which makes me, as a vaguely technically thinking guy, go, they're a wiki then. And a wiki is a website where it has pages, and the community is invited to edit those pages, like Wikipedia or whatever. But you can't do that on WikiLeaks. Like, WikiLeaks is one direction only. We put up stuff and you can read it. And I'm like, then why do you have wiki there? And they're like, well, we used to be a wiki. And I'm like, I know. I remember you a couple years ago when random people would upload leaked documents, and then people would go look at them, and they could comment on them and stuff. And they're like, that's why we're called WikiLeaks. And I'm like, but you don't do that anymore. They're like, no, too many people were uploading crap. And I'm like, yes, it's on the internet. I mean, you knew what you were getting into. And they're like, no, we had to stop all that stuff because we wanted to vet all of our documents first. And I'm like, why didn't you rename yourselves then to something like Vetted Leaks or Leaks.com or WeLeakStuff.com or here's where you go to get leakeddocuments.com. That was kind of long. I know why they wouldn't use that one, but that's all I have to say about WikiLeaks. Here's Apple One auction. An acquaintance of mine, a friend of mine, invented the Apple One. So you know who I'm talking about now, okay? I don't know why I'm trying to be vaguely obscure, okay? And then, they had one up for auction in London. And he went to London and signed it for the guy buying it, which I think is just freaky cool. Because there is nothing I have ever invented that if I signed it would make it more valuable. Nothing I have ever invented, and I have invented a couple useful things, a lot of crap, couple useful things. No, my phone has never rung to say, hey Keith, would you come sign this? The closest I've gotten is I've gotten a call. Hi, I'm a patent attorney. Could you verify you worked on this project? And I said, yes, I could. And I've never heard from them again. So I think they don't even need me to do that minimal amount, right? There's no, I got 4 minutes left. Talk about that. Oh, yeah. Okay, buying property. I've only got 3 minutes. As I mentioned, I got all this cash laying around the house, and someone said, Keith, why don't you buy stuff with this cash? And I was like, really? You can do that? And so we were like, well, we own a house. They're like, you could buy another house. I'm like, really? Wouldn't that throw off the demographics if I own 2 houses? Normally it's 1 person, 1 house. I mean, I'm like, no, you could buy another one. And then my sister-in-law was like, I want to move out. I'm like, is it something I did? And she's like, no, I just want my own space. I'm like, it's something I did, right? Because she's been living with us. And it's great because I get up in the morning and there's coffee made. And someone has done the dishes. And this is fabulous because before, when I would get up in the morning, there would be no coffee made. And I would have to move dishes out of the way to get the coffee thing under the water thing to fill it. And that meant my day was starting badly and downhill from there, okay? Sister-in-law lives with me, coffee in the morning made, dishes done. I'm a happy man. She's moving out. Now I'm miserable, okay? So anyway, but she's like, we could buy a house. And I'm like, okay. She's like, we could use some of these barrels of money you have laying around. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm miserable now. You're moving out. She's like, you know, you could hire someone to come over and make coffee for you in the morning. I'm like, no, that would never work. They'd just take my piles of money. Anyway, so she's trying to buy a house. And so we've been like doing real estate inspections and the other stuff and realtors and like they mailed her a contract and we're like reading the contract. Now, I've mentioned before briefly that I'm on a planning commission. So like I read, 200 pages of crap just for fun, really. It's a disease, near as I can tell. Like we're reading a real estate contract, clause 12, blah blah blah, clause 13, blah blah blah, and we're just trying to think. And like we get to the end of one of these rebuttals from one of the sellers, and it's like item 36, item 7 is void. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure item 7 wasn't important. Flip, 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 flip. Oh look, item 7 was ungodly very important. I wonder why they waited till the very, very end to say this wasn't important. Important life lesson, people. Always read to the very end, and then when they say item 7 is void, go back and check what item 7 was, so that you don't accidentally buy something. Oh, on the topic of accidentally buying something, I got like 20 seconds left. Okay. I go to eBay, and occasionally I'll find something I want, and I'll be like, I'd pay $25 for that. And I type in $25, I say place bid, and like 3 minutes later I get email that someone has bid $25.05, and I'm like, I hate eBay, okay? But every once in a while, apparently I will bid $25 on something on like the first day of the auction, and no one ever bids again, and then I get email that's like, you won this, and I'm like, I don't remember buying that. I know, John's cutting me off. I'm acting like I don't see him. I'm surprised. It's the end of the show. It's the end of the show, everyone. See you next time on Lands. Look, I'm getting a delicious Watch, I'm going to sign it. Look, see, I wrote Leaf Eric's on the side, so it's not advertising, right? This is a cup left here by the Vikings. It's historic. This is why we have to have it on television. Yeah, well, I don't remember.